Hello, everybody. Welcome to the stream. A good time zone to everybody. Hope y'all are having a good one. Okay, so first of all, I'm trying to figure out a good way, a good alternative to saying like good afternoon instead of saying like good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, whatever time zone you're in. I haven't found a good shorthand for that yet. I don't think. Also, I recently turned down the brightness on my laptop screen. I don't know if that affects what you guys see. I don't think it does. I don't think that makes sense. If I turn up my brightness, it wouldn't turn up the brightness of the stream, would it? Because, like, the brightness is like an external thing. I don't know. I never thought about that, actually. But if it's too dark, let me know. So anyway, today we are working on some more of the cards for Ego and Opus. I have decided to put the latest version of the rules for this game in the About section below the stream. If you are confused about how this game works, you can read up on that right there. There are some images missing from the rulebook that I need to like redo. So if you see some rather odd images in that rulebook, that's why they're there. They're placeholders. Okay, so I suppose we'll just get started. As before, I will go over all of the stuff that I did off stream, sort of give you my rationale for all the decisions I made there. Actually, hold on. Before I go any further, I'll just go ahead and get this up here. You should be seeing that now. Yep, okay. Turn on the music. Isn't that nice? Okay. So, that is unmuted, right? Yes, okay. So, yesterday, what I did was I implemented all the changes to the rulebook that I went over last time. Everything that we, all these global changes, I updated the rulebook to reflect these changes. Well, except for these ones. Haven't done that yet. You'll still see that the lore section is in the rulebook right now. But I will change that soon. But yeah. Any language about defense has been removed to include the new drive system. The staggering has been introduced. Regeneration, drafts, yeah, all that is now in the new rulebook. The last stream we went over and put together the works and the artists for the schools of crafting, culinary, and all. And yesterday, I off stream, I worked on the artists and the works for the literary school. This is off. So I'll go over those changes now. Oh, and also, I put down every other old version of every card into the document, just so that we wouldn't have to type that out later. Hopefully that should help us streamline things a little bit. I won't have to have several windows open at the same time. That's probably the biggest benefit, honestly. Oh, okay. So I chose the names for some of these that I didn't have names for before. Confident defense is now build confidence. That's the same. Hasty defense is defense now. That's the same. Magnum opus is now iterate. Well, actually, magnum opus, masterpiece, and masterwork were just kind of completely removed and replaced with these. So now instead of those, because I think they're too strong, we have iterate, encourage, and self-motivate. That's the same. That's the same. These are the same. Same. Didn't have to change these, really. Criticize, branch out, overshadow. Okay, so interpret, deeper meaning, subvert, and subvert seemed a little too complex to be all cards, especially since there were some other very basic effects that weren't covered yet. So I decided to replace those as well, save those effects for something else. And I replaced them with workshop, attach a draft, undermine, reduce attack, and support, which forces the target artist to regenerate at any time. I imagine this will be a really strong card. It might be worth actually increasing the drive cost of support, now that I think about it. Because that could be really strong. I mean, you're using your turn to basically... Well, you're using up your artist turn and one drive to let a artist regenerate, right? And if you do that, you know, there's a potential for them to regenerate twice in the same turn, which has limited usefulness since, you know, it can only go up so high. Actually, you know what? I should put that in the rules. I forgot to put that in the rule book, that you can't regenerate past the base drive. I need to do that. Let me write that down. Bench notes. Specify that regen cannot overheal. That's the only, I think that's the only, or that's the main limiter of regen, right? Because you can stack regen. Theoretically, limitlessly. It's only limited by the fact that it can't overheal. It can only bring you back to base. So if you keep giving an artist regen, then it'll be worth it to also increase their base drive at the same time. Which a much fewer amount of cards do. But yeah, maybe there are a lot of 1 and 0 cost. I think I'll actually increase support to 2. Okay, so I'll go over the literary cards. Now, I think I mentioned this before, but my sort of idea with the literary school is that they're focused around the hand and manipulating the hand and like knowing what's in your opponent's hand, as well as a sort of small focus on the text of the card themselves. Like literary cards care about what the name of a card is, or certain words or numbers in results, because it's like, because it's about reading. And, you read your hand, or, stuff like that. So they have a lot of stuff about drawing and intel. Maybe that's a little too much for one school. Maybe that should be divvied out to other schools, but I think there's a nice amount of design space here that we can allow that. But we'll see. So, a lot of these ended up getting changed a fair amount. So, Cliffhanger costs 2. On the next 2 draw phases, your opponent must discard their drawn work if it's not one of their artist's specialties. So, this has a double effect, right? Firstly, it forces your opponent to discard cards, right? Or it forces your opponent to sort of skip their next 2 draw phases, essentially, because they don't get whatever card they draw. Unless it's one of their specialties, one of the specialties one of their artists has. And that's the second, benefit. If they don't discard it, then that means that you know that they have one of the specialties in their hand, but you don't know which one. But that gives you intel, while also it gives you sort of half intel, while also preventing them from building their hand size up. Which I guess, as a third benefit, also means that intel you gathered before by looking at your opponent's cards or their hand, it won't be disrupted by new cards coming into their hand, right? There isn't any new thing to learn, if that makes sense. So, I think Cliffhanger might be more powerful than I thought it was. Anyway, this card was unchanged. I just rewrote the effect. The next 2 works that your opponent draws must be discarded if they are not one of their artist's specialties. Should that be increased? Because it does a lot. Well, I mean, no, I think it's other 2 secondary sort of effects. The knowing if they have a specialty and preserving your intel. They're a lot more niche than the main effect. So, I think I'll keep it as it is. Dramatic Irony. Number 1. One drive. At the end of the flip phase, if target deals damage this round, deal target's attack damage to target. So, this didn't change except for the wording, which was kind of confusing. It also costs 2 now. because the original dramatic irony only checked for damage that was dealt during the flip phase. But this one's a permanent effect. So I increased it. It increased its drive damage, or drive cost. Now it says whenever target artist deals any amount of damage to an ego, their player discards a work. So a lot more clear wording on that one, I think. I think you'll agree. Ghost Rider. I completely changed. Ghost Rider does not exist anymore. It costs 3. Target's attack matches this artist's attack from now on. I felt this was an effect that didn't really fit within the new vision for the literary school, because this is a pretty like attack heavy thing. I didn't really feel like that fit the vibe, and I need some more cards that fit in with this archetype that I was going for. So I changed it to Encyclopedia instead. Cost 2. Whenever target artist plays a work, their player must reveal it before it is attached. Yeah, okay. So, this is something that I've been thinking about in terms of wording, not related to Encyclopedia, but when it comes to saying whenever target artist plays, it's sort of shorthand for whenever target artist's player plays a work on this artist. Right? That's what it means when it says an artist is playing something. I'm not sure if this is confusing wording, but I think having it shortened like this will still make sense. Like, you kind of get what it's talking about, while also being a little more efficient. But I like to know if that's confusing or not. Anyway, you may recognize this as one of the effects that I scrapped from the all. This used to be an all card. I think. Wait, actually, was it? Where was this before? Oh no, this was Dreamcatcher. This is what Dreamcatcher used to do. Wait, no? The heck? What was it? No, it was Stained Glass Window. Stained Glass Window, basically, I repurposed into this. So basically it means that the artist that you target, you'll know what works that they're going to play before or what work they're playing on that artist in particular before it's flipped. Now it doesn't restrict you to targeting a opponent's artist. You can target your own artist, which means that you'll have to reveal what you are playing on them to your opponent. Don't know why you'd ever want to do that. Maybe just like a strange flex. Like some sort of weird power play. I don't know why you'd ever do that, but you can. Next is the only offensive work. The only offensive literary work. Kill Off. Used to cost 3. Retire target if this artist is the only one targeting it. Now this obviously is a very powerful effect. It's basically an insta-kill if you can meet its requirements. The playtesters that I had, the players, addressed some concern about this work in particular just because it seems so strong. Because you don't know if they're playing it or not. So there's no way to know, right? And the condition is not necessarily that difficult to achieve, I guess. I mean, it requires some setup. But if you're playing a literary... If you have literary artists, then kill off is always kind of like a threat that has to be in the back of your opponent's mind. Because you could play kill off, right? And if this artist is the only one targeting their target, then they just got a free kill. All right. So I decided to change it up to make it a little harder. Now it costs 4, and it says at the end of the flip phase, if target was not affected this round, retire it. So it still has the same basic idea, but it requires that your target doesn't get affected by anything for the entire phase. They're not damaged. They're not buffed, even by like a blanket effect, right? That they're not necessarily being targeted. I mean, that kind of thing is rare anyway. But if nothing else, it makes it more clear, and it sort of future-proofs it for future effects that might be able to affect things without necessarily targeting them. And of course, it's more expensive. It's the I mean, now it's the most expensive work in the game at 4. So that's that. And I think it's also balanced by being the only offensive work that the literary school has. Well, yeah, dramatic irony doesn't even do attack damage anymore. I kind of forgot to mention that. Yeah, I changed attack damage to discarding. So that it's more in theme. So, kill off is sort of their only offensive option. And it's kind of risky to go for. Because if it doesn't work, then you just spent 4 drive on doing nothing. Proofread did not change. It costs 1 drive. You may look at a random work in your opponent's hand. This is just like I imagine this is just a sort of staple card for literary. You kind of always want to have proofread in there. Only costs 1, and you only get to see a random one in their hand. So it's not too strong. I mean, obviously, there should be effects later that allow you to, like, there could be effects later that let you look at an entire hand or 2 random cards or something like that. So, yeah, this is sort of like the base. Proofread is sort of like the base of the concept of look at a work in your opponent's hand. You only get 1 and it's random. All right. Pretty basic. Wait, how many syllables? Although I think the name is pretty funny, I kind of removed this work. It costs 2. If a player has 5 works in their hand, they must discard their hand and draw 7, and vice versa. Felt pretty strong, but also kind of like niche at the same time. And I wanted to have at least 1 work that interacted with drafts in this school. I want at least 1 work per school that interacts with drafts and interacts with regen somehow. So I ended up cutting wait how many syllables for this purpose, just because it seemed like sort of a weird effect. Very specific. And it affects both players at the same time. So, I mean, I definitely want to experiment with this kind of effect again later. But that's the great thing, right? I keep these notes and I have these to refer to later. In case I need some more effect ideas I can draw from old stuff that was cut. Hold on. I am live, right? I just kind of only now looked at Chatterino. I mean, it says that I'm online. So, I mean, I'll go with that. But, you're not live? Ah, crap. Okay, let me go ahead and, let me go ahead and reset the stream here. BRB. Nah, I'm just kidding. You know I'm just pulling your leg. Anyway. That was dumb. Wait how many syllables basically has been replaced with story outline. It costs 2, and it allows you to attach a draft to this artist for every work that was played this round. What is the advantage of killing off an artist? Okay, so that's a very good question. That's something that the players were asking me as well, because basically an artist dying is kind of inconsequential, and it's kind of by design. I don't want I don't want the death of artists to be too consequential, because I don't want fighting artists to become a focus, right? The focus of the game should be killing the egos, right? Now, there is, I mean, looking at most of these effects, I say that, but like looking at most of the effects, they affect artists, right? In some way, most of them. Like the whole concept is that you want to sabotage your opponents while also working towards the goal of killing the egos first, right? And everything should, you know, help you towards that goal. The main advantage of killing off an artist is getting rid of that particular artist's like passive ability, if it's happening to be giving you a hard time. And it gets rid of any permanent effects that they have attached to them. Any buffs that they're giving another artist. And it means that unless they have another artist with the same school to replace them, then it prevents them from using a work of a certain type of school, potentially. With the added bonus of a artist that just got freshly replaced being unable to do anything. So if you kill an artist before they can act, then you can sort of rob the opponent of an action. Thinking about it, that might be the most advantageous aspect about killing an artist. But again, artists don't permanently get removed. They they go back into the artist deck and can be used later. So their actual death is not too bad. Actually, you know what? Actually, thinking about it, it might be in your favor more so to keep an artist barely alive rather than straight killing them off, right? Because an artist at like 1 or 2 drive is going to be a lot less capable than a freshly a fresh artist that just replaced that new one with all of their drive, right? So maybe it could be a better strategy to sort of to keep opponents' artists low but not necessarily dead. You know what I mean? I never thought about it until saying it out loud, but yeah, that could be a valid option. In fact, that could make for an interesting effect, right? Like,
Game music at its best 24 hours a day. You're listening to the RP Gamers Network Radio.
it could be an interesting effect, to like have a work that says target artist doesn't get retired when they're at 0. Although that could easily backfire on you. Why keep them low though? Why not just attack the artist? Well, again, like, you can attack. Like, attacking an artist reduces their drive. So you can attack them until they're at low drive, and then you can ignore them for a little bit because they won't be as capable, and then you can attack them again. At least in theory. That's the idea. I mean, the effectiveness of killing an artist can change wildly based on what design decisions we decide to make. Because we could do many things, right? We could make an artist permanently out of the game, and you lose if you lose all of your artists. That's the nuclear option, right? So now you really got to be careful with your artists because you have an alternative lose condition now, which would really take the focus away from fighting egos. Or I mean, actually, you know what? I mean, it might be worth experimenting with that. Like, what if you gained a point? What if you gained 1 point for killing an artist and like 2 points for killing an ego, and you had to get to like, what would it be? Like maybe 7 points. It's like it'd take much longer to win by killing artists, but it would still have a tangible effect. Yet killing an ego and then killing egos is faster. So it still kind of gives you that option if you wanted to win that way. That might be something worth considering, actually. I'll write that down. artists gives points? Question mark. I've thought about having artists, egos, and works being in the same deck, and you have to draw into them in order to replace them. So it's like random. So you'd value your artists more. You know, I've thought about this. I've thought about this idea. Because, again, a game like this, I don't think a game like this quite exists yet. So, there's not much for me to work off of. But if we think about it in terms of Magic the Gathering, right? What is the advantage of killing a creature in Magic the Gathering? Right? You kill... Why would you want to kill a creature? You kill a creature because they're powerful. And they can hurt you a lot. You kill a creature because they have a passive effect that's ruining whatever plan you have. Or you kill a creature because your opponent is using them to defend themselves. Right? Now there are two of those things can apply in this game, I think, to some degree. One being you could have a powerful artist that can deal a lot of damage to egos on the board. There might be an artist that's built up a lot of buffs to their ally. And you want to get rid of them to get rid of all of their works attached to them. But artists, like you don't have health points. Like the player doesn't have health points. So they're not used to defend anything. But, yeah. And, I guess the other example is Pokemon. In Pokemon, they actually do have the, kill Pokemon for points. That's the whole game, actually, I think. When you kill 6 Pokemon, you win the game. I think they're called, like, trophy cards or something. Correct me if I'm wrong there. Or, like, token cards, or I don't know what they call them. But yeah, I think the most elegant... I think if we find that killing off artists isn't worth it enough, then it would be a simple thing to just change how scoring works. I think that'd be the most elegant solution. The simplest, easiest to understand. But if we do, artists should give less points than egos. Because artists are much harder to kill than egos are. At least if, like, in theory. I hope that went on a tangent, but I hope that answers your question to some degree, or gives you something to think about there. I mean, it gives me something to think about. See, this is why I like to have people ask me questions, because it forces me to come up with answers. And sometimes I don't have a good answer, and I need to find one. So, thank you for your question. Like it's an interview or something. Thank you for your question. But yeah, really, it's helpful to have this kind of collaboration during the development process. Anyway, going off of that tangent for at least now, I think I went over story outline. I wanted to have one with draft. And this is a pretty simple one. It's not very strong. But every work that was played this round, or I guess like shorthand for every work that has been played up until the point of playing this. It still makes sense either way. Attach a draft to this artist for every work that was played this round. Yeah. And that includes this one. But yeah, because playing a work and then flipping it is different. So maybe I should say attach a draft to this artist for every work that was played. Yeah, you know what? I can keep that. I was gonna say that was played during the play target phase, but that just I think that overcomplicates things a little bit. Okay. What do we got next? Expose. So, the old version of this says, cost 2. Target ego's bottom strategy is replaced with ego adjacent to this ego this round. Egos retired by other egos award no points. So the original concept of this was that you're threatening publishing an expose on this ego, right? So they change up their bottom strategy to attack the ego next to them. Or like you present like damning evidence of how bad of a neighboring ego or how bad of an ego the adjacent ego is, and they're attacking each other. Kind of like it forces them to friendly fire, basically. And again, I felt like it didn't really fit within the new archetype I was working with. So I decided to change expose. It's still thematic, but it also is our designated regen card now. It costs 1 and says your artists have +1 regen if your opponent allows it. If not, deal 3 damage to target. Okay, actually I lied. This is the other damage dealing work in literary. And funnily enough, it's actually a pretty powerful attack if your opponent chooses for it to be. This is the only card with this kind of effect in the game where your opponent controls what it does. But I think it's an interesting play, right? So basically, it's like you're blackmailing your opponent, right? Like, well, I sure would like to deal 3 damage, or I sure would like to have +1 regen for both of my artists. What do you think? And if they disagree, then you get to deal big damage for only 1 drive. Your opponent may choose either or of these effects to happen, depending on whatever situation they're in. If they want you to deal 3 damage to set up for their own artist's kill, then you might want them to do it. And if you don't care about how much drive your opponent has, then just let them have the regen. You know what I mean? Something like that. Foreshadowing. 1. Choose a work from your hand and reveal it. Then put it into your work deck 2 cards below the top, face up. The chosen work has a drive cost of 0. I changed this one basically because it's kind of confusing. Because there's no way to keep track, I guess. Well, like... So basically it's like taking a card from your hand, giving it 0 drive cost, but at the cost of it, you having to draw it 2 turns later. You get to draw a free card 2 turns from now. Right, that's the idea. But there's no way to keep track of which one costs 0 while it's in your hand. I guess, like, you can... I mean, you'll know, but your opponent won't necessarily know. I don't know. It just seemed kind of confusing. Might save this effect for later. But I decided to change it to foreshadowing for 2. Look at the top 3 works of your work deck. Put them back onto the top of your work deck in any order. A much simpler effect and a much more baseline type of effect for a game like this. This is kind of like a staple effect for any game that has card draw in it. And it's pretty strong. I felt like having only the first 2 was kind of lackluster. Well, so here's the thing with this one. I don't know if, because 2 kind of feels a little bit weak, but 3 kind of feels strong. I might actually change that to the top 2. Because all you're doing is basically choosing if you want to switch them around or not. Which is still a good effect to have. Because not only do you know what you're going to play next round, but you can also choose if that's like the ideal thing you want. Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna change this to 2. I think knowing the next 2 works you're going to have is pretty good. Brilliant Satire is the same. Cost 2. Name a work. Works with that name have +1 drive cost from now on. And I just reworded it to fit with the new conventions. Pairs well with proofread or anything that lets you know what your opponent has in their hand. And as an overall good general use too, because like if you I mean, you'll know what kind of schools your opponent is running, so just naming a random one from that school might give you results, you know. But yeah, it definitely benefits from having intel, so I kept this one the same. Translation 2. Discard a work and search your work deck for a work with the same drive cost, then reveal it and put it into your hand. Shuffle your work deck afterwards. So the idea here was like, you know, you're translating your card into a different card. You basically get to, well, I mean, it says it right there. You take a work from your hand, and anything with the same drive cost in your deck, you can just retrieve. It costs 2, so that, you know, if you're looking for a 1 cost or a 2 cost, it's kind of like balanced out. But if you're looking for a 3 cost, then it still has some good value. However, I decided to change this so that it pairs better with having intel. So it now costs 1. You still discard a work, but now your opponent must discard a work with the same drive cost if they're able to. If they're not, then nothing happens, which is why you want to be sort of confident in what they have in their hand. So like if you know your opponent is running a lot of 2 cost cards, you can discard a 2 cost, and then your opponent has to discard 1. They get to choose, but they have to. Yo, the Kingdom Hearts type beat? Okay, so that's the, those are the literary works that I worked on yesterday. So, let me move on up to the artists. Forget how long this document is. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, okay, never mind. I was gonna say this is the one where I actually have 6 here, but that's later. Okay, so literary. Tom J.J. Thomas, specialty kill off 317. Deal 1 damage to target at the start of the next flip phase if it was damaged by at least 2 artists this round. Kill off got changed, of course, but it's still his specialty. He has a 3-9, so he can use his specialty twice in a row. And now it says at the end of the ego phase, if target has not taken damage this round, deal 1 damage to it. So he's all about aggression, which is very strange for literary. But yeah, he's all about being very aggressive. So if his target didn't get damaged at all, such as in the case of kill off failing because it was affected by something, actually, the only way for kill off to fail is if it's affected by something, which is most likely going to be damage. So, maybe this signature doesn't pair as well as I thought it did. Basically, if their target doesn't get hit by anything, then it takes 1 damage. I guess you could think of it as sort of like a miniature version of kill off. But then again, if you're targeting it, then that means you're either attacking it or using a work on it. Yeah, I might change this. It should pair with the idea of like, okay, you use kill off, but the target got affected, so now kill off doesn't work. It should pair with that situation somehow, because that's his specialty. Maybe if the target did take damage? Or... I don't know how I didn't catch this. I was like really thinking about... I remember thinking about this signature for a little bit. Like what I should change it to. Because I didn't think hard enough. If target... Maybe we base it around if it did take damage this round. Or if target only took if target took damage from only one source, it gets an extra damage. Exactly one source this round. What do we think of that? It I mean, it sort of keeps with the idea of him being the only one attacking the target, and them benefiting from them being the solitary attacker. But it also helps to cover for the eventuality of kill off failing. In the case of an ego, at least. I think that's a little. I think that's more useful. Yeah, I think I'll keep it like that. Before we continue, though, I'm gonna take a short break. I'll be right back, chat. We back. Okay. So, we back. Where were we? Okay, so we just went over Tom. So, Cajita Triste had to change quite a bit because his specialty was wait how many syllables, which has been cut. He had 233, and whenever anybody discarded or retired a work, this artist gained drive. Which of course benefited heavily from wait how many syllables, since it could cause up to 2 players. At the minimum, wait how many syllables would force a player to discard 5 cards. But at the maximum, it could force up to 14 works to be discarded at once. Which, thinking about it now, maybe I didn't think that through. Because I was like, well, this artist is all about getting people to discard things, so he should have something that, benefits from discarding. I completely ignored the fact that his specialty allows you to discard up to 7 cards at the same time. That's kind of wacky. So probably for the best that I changed him now that I'm looking at it. So now his specialty is foreshadowing, which costs 2, so he can use his specialty 4 times in a row at max, from base anyway. At the beginning of the flip phase, you may predict how much drive this artist will lose during the flip phase. If correct, draw a work. Wait, that is how foreshadowing works, right? You think I know these cards better than anyone. Look at the top 2. Yeah. How much drive this artist will lose during the flip phase. Yeah, okay. So, I mean, the theme of, like, knowing what's coming up, predicting what's going to happen, is there. For some reason, I thought this was more relevant to his specialty, which it's kind of not relevant at all to his specialty. But basically, this is like, I mean, obviously you know what work you played on your own artist, so you should be able to predict how much drive they're going to lose. But if they get attacked, then of course that means they lost more drive than you thought. Or you plan ahead for that eventuality, and you predict that your opponent's going to attack for how much amount, so you account that into your prediction. Either way, you draw a work if you're correct. Oh, that's how it ties in, because it allows you to draw a work, and you know what work that'll be if you use foreshadowing. Okay, that's where it comes from. Werther Moffin didn't change, really. Proofread 136. Whenever this artist looks at a work in your opponent's hand, you may forbid your opponent from playing that work next round. The wording just changed slightly. Whenever you look at a work, I basically removed this artist because that didn't make any sense in the context of this effect. Whenever you look at a work in your opponent's hand, you may forbid your opponent from playing it next round. Oh, I know what that meant. Basically, the old version meant that this artist had to play a work that lets you look at your opponent's hand for this to trigger. But now it's universal, so whenever either of your artists plays a work that lets you look at your opponent's hand, you gain the benefits. Okay. This is sort of similar to Column, except that this effect allows that chosen work to be discarded still. It just can't be played. Hegemony Hark has Expose. This artist will never be chosen as the target of an ego whose strategy led to a tie. That was the old effect. I changed this basically because it seemed a little too niche to have as a passive ability on an artist. It should be something that comes into play more often than not. And I mean, it does seem that ties seem to happen somewhat often. But normally you don't want to go for a tie. Well, then again, I mean, if you have this artist, then I guess you would be wanting to go for ties. I don't know. Maybe I'll change it back to that. But Expose changed its effect, obviously. So I changed the signature. This artist cannot be targeted by an ego that is using their top strategy. So they'll never be the target of a top strategy ever. That's the idea anyway. This signature is more so just for the theming rather than tying in directly with Expose, because it doesn't really have anything to do with Expose, and neither did the old effect. Well, yeah, the old Expose kind of synergized more with the old signature, but the new Expose doesn't really have anything to do with this signature. But I like the theming, and it's more relevant. Janet Dawson used to have Ghost Rider, which doesn't exist anymore. Copies of this artist's specialty have a drive cost of 0. Basically, they could just keep copying their specialty indefinitely with no cost. Which for Ghost Rider was okay, because you couldn't stack it multiple times on a single artist. So the most you'd ever have to use it is 3 times. But of course that got completely changed. So now Janet Dawson uses Encyclopedia, which lets you know which works are being played on a specific artist. Whenever your opponent targets a non-ego, they must tell you what they are targeting. So even more intel. Not only do you know what work they're playing, but now you also know who they're targeting at all times. Maybe this is a little too much intel. Maybe this is too strong. I'm not sure. But I mean, it's certainly powerful. Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, that's something we'll need to do with playtesting. All of these will have to be tested through playtesting. That's a given. But stuff like this definitely needs extra attention. Okay, so everything else is left up to us. But before I move on, I'm gonna run a couple of global changes by us. I'll put these in parentheses. Change. And the other being these are a couple of global changes that I've been considering. So let me go over this one first, because we kind of talked about the score limit thing earlier. Combine the ego and the artist decks and the draft pile into one reserve pile. Right, so currently there are like 5 decks you have to keep track of, or 5 deck/piles. There's your work deck, there's your artist deck, there's your ego deck, there's your graveyard, and then if you're using drafts, then you have a pile for drafts, right? Like to keep them off to the side. So I'm thinking it would just be a lot more convenient and easier to understand if all of those cards just went into one pile and not call it a deck. Because I think when you call something a deck, it implies that you're drawing from the top. You're drawing randomly from the top, and it needs to be shuffled, and everything that you associate with the word deck, right? But you don't have to do any of those things for any of these cards. You don't need to shuffle your ego deck or your artist deck or draw off the top. But I have noticed that a lot of players tend to assume that, because it's called a deck. So my idea is to just combine all of those into one reserve pile and have that be where all the cards go that you don't need to draw. I think, again, this is a simple change, but it will also open up some design space, I think. There could be potential for, like, maybe you can choose to put a drawn work in the reserve pile and save it for later. Stuff like that. So I think that would help simplify things, while also enabling us to add some extra complexity, and sort of future-proofing any kind of cards that we might need to have a separate pile for. And then the score limit we talked about before seems like an elegant way to still incentivize killing egos, which is the goal of the game, but also give a good reason why attacking artists is a viable strategy, or making it more viable anyway. I mean, it's not as viable, but it could be viable. But yeah. I'm not too solid on those. I like to know what you guys think about those ideas. And I would feel confident that these would be the last two major system changes made if we do choose to make them. So yeah, I'll leave that there. Just want to have that noted. So let's go ahead and move on to the next school, which is Marshall. Oops. So, martial arts. If we want to have every school to have its own sort of thing, have its own focus, then, well, see, in the old version of the game, they sort of had a focus on defense, or defense and damage, you know? With some other things mixed in there. But mostly defense and damage, right? Which I guess wasn't much of a focus. But you know, martial arts is about fighting. And since defense is drive now, and drive gain is kind of covered by culinary now, I feel like this is the obvious candidate for focusing on attack, right? Just raw damage. And various ways to deal damage. But that could easily get out of hand because, you know, the main goal of the game is to deal damage. So they need some drawbacks to sort of make up for that, I think. Either that or just, you know, design the cards better. Which, well, that's probably the better idea. So, with that in mind, I think we'll have Marshall be... Marshall's basically going to be the red, I think, of this game. If culinary is, you know, if culinary in this scenario would be white. Or, yeah, I guess culinary would be white here. Craft would be green, I guess. Marshall is like artifact. In what way? You know what? Actually, craft is probably more like artifact. Because artifact is all about creating tokens and sacrificing them. Or, well, I guess green does a lot of that too. Creating tokens and then using those tokens as a resource. So craft is kind of like green or artifact, I guess. What was the other one that we just did? Literary? Literary is definitely very blue. So Marshall would be red in this analogy. I guess we really can't escape magic, huh? I guess it would be for the best for there to be some familiar elements in this game because it's so different. Have some familiar design conventions present. And of course, there are design conventions for a reason. Although, I know a lot of people don't like white in Magic. They think it's like really like pointless, underpowered, not very good. But I would like to know why you think Marshall is like artifact. I'm not sure what that's supposed to mean. Okay, so I guess the goal here is to make every work deal damage somehow. At least a little bit. Either deal damage or buff damage, or they both have an A in the name. Ah, okay, I get you. And Marshall, yeah, they both have 2 A's. I was gonna say, and they're in the same place too, but no, they're not. Well, you know, they share what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They share 5 letters in common. That's pretty good. So I'll just name it / / for now, because I don't know what it's called. I don't know what it does either. Well, yeah, this first one gives us a little bit of a problem already, because this is just increased defense. Can't spell either word without art, and that is pretty important. Very thematic. The lore runs deep. You know, I suppose I did say I want at least 1 drive, or at least 1 regen and 1 draft card per school. So I guess block can be our regen card. But how do we do damage and regen at the same time? And don't worry, I probably won't change grapple. I know, Kat, that you are very partial to the grapple card. And, you know, I'd hate to get rid of it. Okay, so maybe they won't all be dealing damage, but most of them should. So block, let's say block becomes a card that deals damage and also gives you regen. Or for every damage dealt this turn, regen that same number. I think there's a card that does that. Is that red wine? This artist has +1 regen for every artist that attacked this round. Sort of similar. Your proposition would be even more powerful, though, I think. Because... oh, what the heck? Because not only is it counting how many times that you attacked, but like, because like 2 attacks is 2 attacks, but both of those attacks could do like 2 damage. So you get +4 regen. That's pretty bomb. Regen is equal to artist's attack. Well, if this is the Marshall School, then they might end up having higher attack than usual. Unless they have low base attack, but all of their works deal high damage. You know what I mean? Maybe you could balance it that way. I like where you're going though, because like maybe we don't have it be an attack, but it has something to do with the attack stat. The thing with the attack stat is that it's just very simple, so there aren't many ways to like toy around with it. But maybe I don't know. How do you incorporate regen here without treading old ground? I mean, it could just be like a standard, like, this artist gains plus regen. Or, but that's boring though. That's not very in theme, is it? What? Okay, here's an idea. What if What if you gain regen for attacking a target with regen?
Listening to Game Music Radio, brought to you by rpgamers.net.
Like, this artist +1 regen if they, or, you know, deal damage if target have regen. This artist gain regen, something like that. If both artists in play are martial, regen half of both attack combined. So like, if you have one that's at 3 and one that has an attack of 5, add those and then divide it in 2. Okay. It's a pretty limited regen effect, but I think it's appropriately limited. If both of your artists are martial, this artist, maybe they both gain +1 regen? Like if both of your artists are martial, they both gain regen. Or they both have regen, rather. Artist has additional regen equal to their combined base attack divided by 2 rounded up. So they benefit from having high attack, which of course is in theme. And it requires some setup in order to do this. I think that's pretty fair. I like that idea more than this one. Well, I think they both have their merits. Because this one, the second one, promotes you buffing up your artist so that you can get the most out of it. When you actually are able to use it. But the top one straight up encourages you to deal damage. But specifically to artists. Dealing damage to artists. I think they both have their merits. They have merit, if you will. You know, maybe that could be a secondary focus for this school. Is both of the artists being martial at the same time. Sort of like gives the impression that they're like a tag team, kinda. Or that they're doing like a coordinated attack. That could be an interesting angle. Got that Kingdom Hearts type beat going. I'll take this one. Good suggestion, Cap. I like this effect. So what's the theoretical maximum? The theoretical maximum is like... Well, I mean, the theoretical maximum is limitless, I guess. But like, realistically, the highest that you'll get, the upper bound, is like... 3. They have 3 regen. Which is still strong, but it does require you to have 2 artists that are both martial that both have 3 base attack. And only this one is getting the regen, so... And I think rounded up is fair for this. Because, like, let's say you have a 2 attack and a 1 attack. Combined 3 divided by 2. That's 1.5. That would give you 2 rounded up. But 1 rounded down. So I guess the question there is... Do we allow the player to benefit based on the highest attack that's present in the equation or the lowest attack? Generally speaking. Well, highest makes more sense. It makes, and it would make the card more effective overall. Highest? Yeah. Okay. So, I'm thinking this work should have, like... How much should the drive cost be? It's strong if you get it. I don't think it should cost 1. I think it should be more expensive than that. At least 2. 3 seems a bit pricey for the setup. I mean, I guess if you just have a full martial deck, then there is no setup involved at all. So But that does require you to give up on using other schools, generally speaking. Does 2 sound fair? 2 cost? And I know that with increased, this is sort of a side thing, but with increased base drive across the board and the ability to regen, it would make sense to increase all of the drive costs of works overall. But I think since they're also being shared as health, I think having the 1 to 3 general cost is still okay. Because you have to take into account that artists are going to be taking damage as well. So you can't make them super expensive. But I think in this case 2 is fair. I think 2 is fair. But what do we call it? What kind of martial art maneuver would make sense for this? Maybe we call it like team up or tag team. It's only this artist is benefiting. So team something, you know. There's another Sarge moment. Debuffing non-OP things. What are you talking about? I think 2 is a fair price for this. Because you have to account for the ability for a player to just only use martial. You know? Because this work could potentially get pretty powerful. Of course, I'm also thinking theoretically, because, you know, if I had if I had just the ability to throw these cards into a testing area and just test them on the fly, I mean, I would, but I can't. So we have to think about these. I'll leave the name for later, unless we come up with one. Cripple. I think cripple can stay the same. I'm pretty okay on that. Target has -1 attack this round. I remember in an even older version of this game that cripple didn't apply the debuff just on a round basis. It would like be permanent. So instead of has attack -1 attack this round, it would say target has -1 attack, period. So you could stack the debuff, and then they just can't play the game anymore. They can't attack, unless of course they use works. Well, I mean, if we made it cost more, Well, no, I don't know. It is kind of funny. But we shouldn't do things just because it's funny, right? Because -1 attack, for a lot of artists, just reduces them to 0 attack. So... I mean, this isn't a... I don't think this is a specialty for anybody, so you can't just copy it over and over. But if you have several copies of it, then there's nothing stopping you from playing it in a row. Well, I did want more permanent effects, so... There we go. Cripple is now buffed. See, I can buff things too. Display of strength. Deal attack damage to target. This artist cannot be targeted by egos this round. So this is a pretty strong ability. You can get like a really strong attack out, and then you don't have to. Then all you have to worry about are artists, unless they've already attacked you. Which, I mean, can't really stop that. But like, not being able to be targeted by egos is pretty powerful. Because egos are where most damage comes from, I think. I mean, at least at this point in the game, I think egos are where most of the damage comes from. Two. I think, well, I think it's okay. I think display of strength is okay as it is. To target. I wonder maybe if the effect should be toned down a little bit. It can still be strong. Maybe it can't be targeted by egos using their bottom strategy. It's kind of similar to Hegemody's signature. But, you know, only on a per round basis. And most egos are going to be using their bottom strategy anyway, but it does mean you have to worry about things a little bit. So, how about we do this? Be targeted by egos using their bottom strategy this round. What was the wording that I used? Hegemony. This artist cannot be targeted by an ego that is using their top strategy. This artist cannot be targeted by an ego using its bottom strategy this round. I think that's still in theme, right? Because the whole idea of this is that the artist is performing a move that looks so vicious that the ego's kind of like scared of them. They'll only be confident enough to attack that artist if they're using their more superior planned out top strategy. But if they have to resort to their bottom strategy, then they're not confident enough, I guess. That's kind of the idea. I think it's a little bit more balanced, if you ask me. I like grapple, so it stays. Simple as. Reversal. This artist ignores the first 3 points of damage they would take from artists this round. So there's another defensive ability. And unfortunately, this is Sergeant Mulaney's current specialty. So, another thing about Sergeant might change now. I mean, we can keep the concept. Because the concept is like, you know, they're performing a strategic move to avoid the damage, and like sort of, you know, like I don't even know what it's called other than calling it a reversal. You know, where somebody goes in for a punch and they grab their arm and like flip them around. You know, something like that. So, its effectiveness is based upon them getting attacked. So we can still work with that. So, what if instead of making them immune to damage, instead it lets them perform a counterattack? Well, I guess that wouldn't. I guess we'd call it counterattack at that point, right? Counterattack. Here's the idea. Not only does it let them attack, but it increases their attack first. damage this round. Or whenever this artist is dealt damage this round, they gain +1 attack and deal attack damage to the damage source. Whenever this artist is dealt damage this round, they gain +1 attack and deal attack damage to the damage source. How do we feel about that one, chat? I think it keeps the spirit of reversal. It still feels like a sort of a defensive maneuver, but fits more with the aggressive theming we're going with. It can make them pretty strong in one turn. Like, especially if they're attacked by an ego. Like, this could allow you to attack twice. You attack at the same ego twice in one turn. If you set it up so that that ego attacks you. Right. And hey, if Sarge gets this, then, that's a Sarge buff, right? I mean, kinda. Plus, don't you think the martial arts school needs at least one counterattack? Solid stance. This artist's target cannot be changed by your opponent from now on. See, there aren't very many effects in the game that change that. I sort of made that thinking that there would be more. But I think there's only like 2 or 3 cards in this version of the game that force an opponent to change their target. Mostly the performing school. Oh, let's see. Well, looking up change doesn't give us anything. Target. I'm sure that the word target shows up innumerable times. Never mind. But yeah, I'm sure there aren't very many effects this applies to, so maybe we should change this. I just thought of another thing This artist is going to be Marshall anyway. So we should change it to if your other artist is Marshall. This artist has additional region equal to their combined. If your other artist is Marshall, this artist has additional region equal to their combined base. Does that still make sense, doesn't it? If your other artist is Marshall, this artist has additional region equal to their combined base attack divided by 2. By saying there, it sounds like it's talking about just that other artist in particular, so I need to reword that somehow. If your other artist is Marshall, this artist has additional region equal to the combined base attack of both artists divided by 2, rounded up. There we go. Okay, moving on. Back to solid stance. So let's shift this up a little bit. We don't have anything that interacts with drafts yet. I just don't know how that'd work thematically or mechanically for Marshall. I'm thinking, okay, so I'm trying to think ahead. I'm trying to think, like, several steps ahead. Because, like, right now, there aren't very many works that change targets. But what if there were later? Like, I'm thinking, what if we made one of the schools focus on changing targets around? Like, I think that'd be a good candidate for performing. The performing school, that their thing is that they shift around targeting, maybe. So it'd be more useful if that were the case. But at the same time, it would then also kind of feel like it exists only to counter that one school specifically, which is, you know, there are 7 different schools in the game, so it's kind of niche. Cannot be changed by your opponent. Maybe we save this effect for something else. Let's come back to this. Toss around. See, this is an interesting one as well. This is another one that benefits from having both artists being martial. Target ego and ego across from your other artist. Switch positions. If your other artist is martial, deal 1 damage to both egos. So this helps with positioning of egos, right? If, well... I'm trying to think. I don't know if there'd ever be a situation in which one of your... Well... Yeah, I guess there would be situations in which, one of your artists couldn't target an artist that your other one can. Because let's see, let me visualize this. So we have oh god, I'm trying to draw with a mouse here. E. There's your egos. Artist. Alright, so here's your 2 artists. This guy can do these 2. This guy can get these 3. Well, one of them overlaps. I guess that's the same with these positions as well. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. One can get the top half and one can get the bottom half. Okay, so I guess that does have some use. Why can't I? Hello? There we go. Does anything here cost 1? We'll make this cost 1. Ego across from artist. Switch zones? Nah, well. Yeah, zones. Switch zones. If your other artist is martial, deal 1 damage to both egos. Solid stance. I'm thinking the solid stance. Maybe we could make solid stance something that incorporates this both artists are martial idea. Like maybe if both of the artists are targeting the same target, they get a buff. There. I wanted to give it something so that it's useful even if you don't have both, but it's more effective if you do. I didn't want it to be completely useless. If that's not the strategy you wanted to do. If your other artist is martial, this artist has additional regen equal to the combined base attack of both artists divided by 2 rounded up. If not, this artist has +1 regen. Just a little undervalued regen gain, but regen gain nonetheless. Give it a little extra sauce. If this whenever this artist targets the same target as your both of your artists target whenever both of your artists target the same, or rather while both of your artists have the same target. While both of your artists have the same target, what happens? While both of your artists have the same target, this artist gains +1 attack, maybe? Or they have +1 attack, as long as they're targeting the same target. Has +1 attack. If both artists are martial, While both of your artists have the same target, this artist has +1 attack. If both artists are martial, or if the other artist is martial, they have +1 attack. Well, both of your artists have the same target. This artist has +1 attack. If the other artist is martial, how do I word this? If the other artist is martial, they also have +1 attack? If the other artist is martial, they have +1 attack as well. Your artists have the same target. Artist has +1 attack. Both artists have +1 attack. There we go. And we'll make this, we'll make this 2. Or, yeah, let's make it 2. And I'll decide on a name for that later. +1 attack. Okay. I like that. I think that's a good card. Id Fist Style. This is one of the, I think this is the only card that is relevant to the plot of the game. Which, I do intend for this game to have something of a plot, has some lore. It's not very involved. It's a pretty simple plot. But this, well, I guess it's not. Yeah, it's related to the plot. I guess I won't reveal how it's related to the plot, but it is. I think I'm gonna keep it the same. It says, deal 3 damage to target ego. Target ego attacks twice this round, using both strategies available. If not, they use their bottom strategy twice. So it deals a ton of damage, and it makes the ego more aggressive as a countermeasure, I guess. It's I like to imagine it's sort of like you know, like in Street Fighter, how there's like an evil Ryu who uses like the demon version of his fighting style, and he powers it up with like negative energy or whatever. Kind of the same idea with id fist style. Like the artist is using the power of their id to power up their attacks, and they transform the ego into this like extra sinister id monster that that's more aggressive. That's the concept there. 3 damage to ego. And of course, it's naturally chaotic because, the ego attacking twice might attack you twice if you're not careful enough. Not sure why I didn't just copy paste, but I'm already typing it out. If not, they use their bottom strategy twice. There we go. Hyong. This is a choose one. Cost 1. Either this artist has +2 drive from now on, or choose a work attached to target artist. This artist is no longer affected by its results. So it's sort of like, for those who don't know what a hyong is, if you've ever watched any martial arts movie or sat in on a martial arts lesson, a hyong is, I think it originates from Taekwondo. I'm not sure, don't quote me on that. But it's like that series of choreographed moves that they do to sort of like get in focus, you know? I don't know if you know what I mean by that. But it's like, you know, where they walk around the room and do all those like fancy moves. They're not attacking anybody, but you know, they're walking around and doing stuff like hoo, hya, ha, wah, you know, that kind of thing. That's a hyong. Had to look up what that was called, by the way. I didn't just know that. I didn't take any martial arts classes in my youth. But yeah, that's what a hyong is. And I read that a hyong is basically something to help you like focus and you know, train discipline. So I kind of approached it like a sort of meditative effect. So the original concept was that it either gives you more drive because, like, you know, you're more focused and you have, you know, you're able to do more, or it prevents you from being affected by any permanent effect from now on. But I suppose we could change that to be either plus attack, or we actually need to, well, we don't need to, but we can use this as the sort of draft effect. So what if we did this artist has +2? No. Attach 1 draft. Attach. Okay. attach one draft to this artist, or get this, sort of use that whole immune to permanent effects and sort of shift that around. So this artist's this artist's attack value cannot be changed by, what was the wording I used for the old solid stance? This artist's target cannot be changed by your opponent from now on. This artist's attack value cannot be changed by your opponent. Has the same sort of vibe as the old Hyung. But it better synergizes with the new angle we're taking. And then spinning roundhouse, because I didn't have any kicks represented. I realized that I didn't have any kicks in the game yet, so I just went ahead and did spinning roundhouse. Spinning roundhouse is a very simple card. It's just a very nice value damage card. Just deals 3 damage. That's it. Because there is a card that does 3 damage for 2, or, you know, this deals 3 damage for 3, but it has that extra effect on it. This is just a simple roundhouse kick to the dome. Damage to target. Save. Deal 3 damage to target. Boom. And that is the those are the martial. Actually, we need to come up with a name for these before we move on. Okay. So what should this be called? I'll ask you, Cap, first. What do you think? What do you think this work should be called? I mean, you kind of came up with the effect, so fitting. I think that you should give the first suggestion for the name. I think I have an idea myself. Because, like, the whole concept is that... Allow me to think. Okay. So, let's see. It benefits from having 2 martial artists doing it at once, or being involved. And, it's about regen. So maybe something about 2 martial artists helping each other. Or, like, growing stronger or something. Combat meditation? Hold on. This should not, that should be a period and not a semicolon. Combat meditation. I think that's okay. But allow me to give a few suggestions of my own. I was thinking, you know, since it's a group, I mean, what do two martial artists do together when they're trying to get stronger? I was thinking something like training, or like battle training or something, or like mutual training, or maybe even is the if you're familiar with the haka, I don't know if that's a martial art thing. It seems like something that would be sparring. You know what? That's actually a really good name. I like that. Sparring. Yeah, cuz it's also factoring in their attack. I think it's a really good name for that. Thanks for the suggestion, Cap. I was thinking more complicated than it had to be. I forgot the word sparring existed. But yeah, they're sparring, comparing each other's attack, and they both mutually get stronger after the experience. I think that fits like a glove. Let me rewrite this to be consistent with the others. Has +1 regen. What have I done? Control C, Control V. This artist has +1 regen. If your other artist is martial, this artist has additional regen. Wait. I need to word it so that it doesn't it doesn't sound like both of them stack. This artist has +1 regen. If your other artist is martial. Actually, you know what? Maybe this has the better wording and the other ones need to change. If your other artist is martial. If both of your artists have the same target and your other artist is martial, both artists have +1 attack. If not, this artist has wait. Oh, I don't know. Hold on. Okay, maybe consistency might make this more complicated than it has to be. Also, I really have to hit the undo button for every individual letter I typed. There we go. I have the same target. This artist has +1. If you're other, both artists have 1 attack. I think that makes sense. Okay, we need a name for this one now too. While both artists have the same target, this artist has +1 attack. If your other artist is martial, both artists have +1 attack. So this is sort of like a coordinated attack between 2 martial artists or between 2 artists. So maybe we should just call it coordinated attack, or flank, maybe? Is flanking... Would you really call flanking a martial... like a martial art move? Or is that just like a sort of general strategy thing? Is the art of war a martial art in itself? Because if so, then yeah, flanking would make sense as a martial art, as a martial work. And it would make sense thematically. Thing is, there a better alternative? I mean, the shorter the name, the better, in general. Sparring, not sparring. Flanking. Coordinated attack. Double team. Hold on. I want to see what the internet consensus is. Is the art of war a martial art? Okay. Yeah, military application, like military strategy, does count as martial arts. So we'll call that flank, because that makes a lot of sense to me. Because you're both targeting them, and it's from different positions. Because there's no way 2 artists can attack. There's no way 2 of your own artists can attack the same target from the same position. You know what I mean? I think flank makes sense here. And okay, now we're good. So let's see. How many of these actually deal damage? That's regen, damage, damage, and target protection. Grapple, for old time's sake. Attack buff and damage. Attack buff. Positioning and damage. Damage. Draft. Debuff protection. Damage. Pretty good spread, I'd say.
Game music at its best 24 hours a day. You're listening to the RP
Gamers Radio. Okay. So now we've done the works. We'll do the martial artists themselves. All right. I think the only one of these artists whose specialty changed was the Geis here. So this should be relatively simple. Cash. Ragadoo. Display. Oh, I forgot to put my chat back. Display of strength. If I can spell. 3, 6, 7, 8. 3, 8. So let's review what display of strength does, because I think display of strength did change a bit. Deal attack damages cannot be targeted by an ego using its bottom strategy. Okay. Whenever this artist retires an artist or ego, this artist has +1 drive from then on. It deals attack damage, right? So Cash using this work deals 3 damage, and then they can't be targeted by an ego under most circumstances. What kind of passive ability could work with that? Because I think this older ability was just to be sort of thematic, because Cash is like a super aggressive street fighter sort of guy, like bare knuckle boxing fighter. So I wanted to emphasize his sort of ruthlessness, so he benefits from killing things. But I think I prefer something more thematic, because the effect of display of strength is rather unique. So it'd be nice to have something that plays into that. But what could play into not being targeted by something? Any suggestions? Because I don't want to keep this. I don't want to keep his old signature. It's kind of bland. This artist. This artist. Do you think the word artist is going to become not real by the time we're done with this? What was the question? I'm thinking that I want to change this passive to something else. Because it's only vaguely thematic. I think I'd like it to be more related to display of strength more closely. So the question was, what kind of passive ability could we put on this artist that would benefit from not being targeted by an ego, like a particular ego? Or alternatively, a passive that could benefit from dealing attack damage to something. Now, do remember that display of strength only prevents you from being targeted by the bottom strategy, which is the more common one. So, perhaps maybe he deals damage back to anything that targets him with the top strategy. That might be something. Like, whenever this artist is attacked by an ego using its top strategy, deal 1 damage to it. Something like that. Or, yeah, something like that. Where he won't be targeted by a bottom strategy, but in the event that he does get targeted by a top strategy, he has something to cover that. As long as no other artist on the board has equal or more attack, he has +1 drive. So you went the other direction. The benefiting from the deal attack damage. As long as no other artist on the board has equal or more attack, he has +1 drive. Okay, so I think I get where, because display of strength, right? I guess the concept is he, you know, he's very proud of how strong he is. So he gets sort of like an ego boost from having the most attack on the board. I kind of like that idea. Let's see. While this artist has the most highest attack. While this artist has the highest attack among... have I used the word among or amongst? Amongst. What's the difference? Is there a difference in usage? Among versus amongst. They mean the same thing. They're both prepositions. Among is the older version of the word, traced to Old English. Amongst appeared in Middle English during the... I know this is like completely off topic, but I mean, this will be important for wording, because there are a number of cards that use among. Add some words. In modern English, we still have some words like that. Added sounds to some words to form adverbs. Once, always, unawares. Amongst, whilst, whence, and amidst may sound dated to some, but they're still part of the language. Okay. That didn't answer my question, but it looks like amongst is the more modern word. So, let me actually change these while I'm at it. amongst well, that I changed that one. Amongst. There we go. While this artist has the highest attack amongst artists, they have plus +2 base drive? Or maybe they have regen? They have, because giving them +1 drive, in this version of the game, you can really only gain drive. You can't just have like extra drive unless you have base drive. Well, this artist has the highest attack amongst artists. They have how about +2 regen? That kind of maintains the same idea. And it kind of ties into having high attack because you get to regenerate when you attack, which would pair well with having high attack. So, and there isn't much that gives regen for Marshall, so I think +2 is okay. Actually, you know what? Do you think maybe it would be better for Cash to have Cripple instead of Display of Strength? Because that way, he can make sure by force that that he has the most. Because Cripple lowers attack. Nothing else uses Cripple as a signature. And I think it would play into the idea of his character being ruthless. I've made an executive decision. Cash Ragado is a specialist in crippling people now. I'll decrease his attack, though, to 2. Well, that's kind of silly, isn't it? 3. Yeah, let's keep it at 3. How much does Cripple cost? Cripple. 2. Okay. So, Cripple costs 2. He has +1 regen. This guy might be a little strong, huh? This artist has the highest attack amongst artists. They have +1 reject. We'll keep him. Cash Ragados, a strong boy. Omar Uldi. This is our grapple fella. Our resident grappler. Artist's middle name should be Mo, and last name should be May. Cash Mon. Cap, come on. That can be his stage name. Cash Money Rogado. Like that's his ring name, you know? Introducing Cash Money Rogado, you know? How do we do that? Compromise. Shake on it? Yeah, okay. What a legend. I would be honored to have my leg broken by Mr. Rogado. An absolute honor. 110. Whenever this artist does not play a card, this artist has +1 defense that round. So, okay, so grapple prevents you, or it prevents the user and the target from doing anything the next round. So the idea here was that for every round that he's grappling, he's, like, benefiting from that, from doing nothing, basically. Except it builds defense. This is building defense. So instead... whenever this artist does not play a work, I guess I should clarify. Whenever this artist does not play a work on the... well, there's no other time you can play a work. You can only play works on the play target phase, so that'd just be superfluous. Whenever this artist does not play a work, they gain something. Well, actually, you know, an artist doing nothing regenerates naturally. Because they're not doing anything. The rules state, I think, the way I worded it is that... hold on. Sorry, chat. I think I worded it as whenever an artist does not play or what was it? Whenever an artist does not flip or copy a work, I think it was, on the flip phase, then they regenerate. I need to check the wording on that. So, if you're grappled and Omar is grappling you, then both of you regenerate by default. Because, I mean, you're not playing a work if you're grappled. So we gotta take that into account now. Maybe we could give him a passive that, like, allows only him to benefit from doing nothing, and the other guy, like, doesn't get to regenerate. Like, maybe, opponent's artists may only regenerate when they attack. Something like that. What do we think of that? Because in that way, you know, he still gets the benefits of regeneration. And, I get, but how would that... I mean, it's not very thematically strong. But it does mean that while grappled, opponent's artists don't even get to regenerate while they're grappled. They just literally get to do nothing. Because they're not allowed to attack either. They can only attack via regeneration. And it means that that one card that we have, that forces regeneration, won't work. Because it's not being procced via attack. Might be a little too specific, though. Whenever this artist is grappled, -1 drive to grappler. Wait, when Omar is grappled? I mean, there's only one card in the game called Grapple. So... His passive being tied to him having grapple used on him, and only then, seems a little bit too niche. Alright, how about this? What if we gave him a passive that kind of lets him act even while he's grappling someone? Right. So what if we did, whenever this artist does not play a work, you may discard a card. If you do, deal damage equal to the discarded card's drive cost to target. What if we did something like that? Because, like, you still have to discard a card, but you can still attack. And it makes up for his one attack. That was a lot of words. That is a lot of words. I need to shorten that somehow. What does that look like? I want to see how long that looks. Whenever this artist does not play a work, you may discard a work. If you do, deal damage equal to the discarded works drive cost to ego across. I mean, that's not incredibly long compared to some of the other things we have. I mean, this one is 5 lines long. It does seem a little bit bloated though. A little. Whenever this artist does not play a work, you may discard a work. You do deal damage equal to the discarded work's drive cost to ego across. I like the concept, but it is like really wordy. We'll figure this one out, and then we'll be done with the stream. But I like to figure out Omar before we leave tonight. It definitely his effect should definitely take place when he doesn't play a work, because that's what grapple does. It prevents him from using a work or attacking. Or maybe we have maybe we make it so that he benefits from not attacking, which is unusual for a martial card, right? A martial artist. I mean, it could be something simple as whenever this artist does not attack, add its attack to your other artist, you know? Like he's giving them his strength. But that doesn't make sense thematically, though. Does not play a work, you may discard a work. When not attacking, use grapple without needing grapple. Yeah, but okay, but then why even have grapple at all then? So your idea is like, whenever this artist does not attack, you may prevent target artist from attacking or playing works next round. So he's just a grapple freak. Grappling is all he does. That's all he knows. Yes. Yes. Precisely. Whenever. That's kind of, I mean, why even use grapple itself though? I kind of like the idea of him just always grappling all the time. But why would you use the grapple itself? Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. But I do like where you're going. How much does grapple cost, by the way? Grapple costs 1. So, even if 10 drive isn't enough for you, like using grapple 10 times in a row isn't enough for you, then you could still use grapple for free. You wouldn't? The work would no longer be needed? Okay, so what would you suggest replacing grapple with? Nothing? Let's see. Maybe toss around. That kind of fits the grappler aesthetic. It's an interesting concept for an artist that we haven't experimented with yet. Is their signature doing the same thing as a work, but just for free? Why does it say grapple beneath his name? Does he get a discount? Is it a specialty? Yeah, it's a specialty. I mean, you know how the specialties work, right? Basically, if grapple was his last played work, then he can choose to copy that work again next round. We could do the whole copies of this artist's specialty cost 0 or cost 1 less. We could do that. When not attacking. Well, I mean, obviously, if you're not attacking, then you're using a work. So that's kind of just moot. You could just say copies of grapple cost 0. But toss around is also a grappling type move. So you could use that instead. How'd that? Copies of this artist's specialty have -1 drive cost. He just constantly grapples. Nothing else. Grapple everybody when he dies. I don't know. I'll think about Omar. I'll put an asterisk on him. I'm not sure what I want to do with them. But that is the that's the stream for today. Today. We got a lot more progress done today than we did last time. Which is good. Obviously, we like progress here. What did we do today? We went over some potential global changes that I may or may not choose to implement. Namely the changes to the score. Killing artists gives you score, but not as much as killing egos. I may do that. The reserve pile concept. I went over the what was it? We just did the Marshall today. I went over the culinary craft. Literary. I went over the literary cards that I did yesterday, and we almost got through all of the Marshall cards. There's just a few artists that we didn't get to, and of course the Omar debacle. But yeah, great progress. I feel really good about it. I feel like this game is starting to get a lot more direction than it did before, which is always nice to have more focus, more direction. I just need to constantly be I need to be aware of exactly what it is I'm doing so that I'm not like overcorrecting anything. I think all the changes that we made so far have been reasonable. And you know, we always have the old version we can fall back onto if it turns out that it's not good. So, yeah. I mean, I haven't remade any of the cards yet. I've just wrote stuff down. So, there's still time to change things. Anyway, good progress. Thank you, everybody, for being here in the stream, for watching and listening. I hope you are enjoying watching the process. That said, I will be working on this off stream, so there will be much more progress made by the time I come back to this on next Monday. Because this upcoming Monday, or next Monday, because this upcoming Monday is the start of gaming week again. I'll be coming back to Oclose. Hopefully we'll be able to get the run on Monday. Oh, you know what? Monday is also President's Day. I didn't plan around that. Maybe I would have had like a special patriotic stream planned, but I don't. It'll be business as usual. I'll think of something. But yeah, Oclose on Monday. And more Ego and Opus development starting the following Monday. So, with that said, thank you everybody for being here. I appreciate it a lot. I appreciate anybody that chooses to stick around, and I hope you were at least a little entertained, or at least I make good background noise. And I hope to see you the next time around. Until then, carpe diem, good time zone, and goodbye.